Okay, let's get right into this one because it is a wild story. We're talking about a transfer that absolutely shook the football world. Not just because of the insane amount of money, but because of the sheer drama behind how it all went down. This is the story of a deal that honestly was never supposed to happen.
So, this is the headline that just exploded everywhere. Liverpool Football Club spends a jaw-dropping, record-shattering amount of cash to sign one of the hottest strikers on the planet, Alexander Isak. I mean, that's the kind of move that screams ambition. And just look at that number for a second. £125 million. And that's before we even start talking about all the add-ons. It is a truly massive figure, and it immediately puts this incredible amount of pressure and expectation on absolutely everyone involved. A proper blockbuster deal. But here's the real kicker. His club, Newcastle, had made it crystal clear to anyone who would listen. Our star player is absolutely 100% not for sale. So, how in the world did we get from a hard no to a British transfer record in a single summer? Well, that is the story we're about to get into.
See, to really get the drama here, you have to understand what was going on at Newcastle. They weren't just, playing hard to get. They had basically built a fortress around their guy, and they had zero intention of ever letting him go.
And you can totally see why Newcastle felt so confident. Isak wasn't just another player, he was the guy, their star striker, the centerpiece of their whole attack. Plus, they had him locked down on a long-term contract, which gives the club all the power. He was the manager's main man. So when Liverpool's first offer came through, it was basically laughed out of the room, rejected, instantly. For Newcastle, that was the end of it. Or so they thought.
What you had here was a classic standoff. Liverpool was dead set on getting their man. Newcastle was just as determined to keep him. The whole unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Something had to break.
And what broke was the player himself. This is the moment the story pivots from just a regular transfer negotiation into a full-blown crisis. And it was all driven by one guy who decided, you know what, I'm taking charge of my own career.
And listen, this wasn't just some emotional outburst. It was a calculated series of moves. First, he just doesn't show up for preseason. That's a huge red flag. Then, he physically removes himself, training all by himself out in Spain. And then finally, he goes for the nuclear option. He takes the whole fight public. And then came the quote that changed everything. When a player goes to the media and says, promises have been broken, well, there is almost no way back from that. He drew a line in the sand for his club, for the fans, for the entire world to see. All of a sudden, Newcastle's unbreakable wall had a giant hole blown right through it. Now this was the moment Liverpool had been waiting for. With the player in open rebellion, the secret to making this deal happen wasn't about finding some magic number anymore. It was all about understanding the new power dynamics that were suddenly in play. And it all boils down to this concept you hear about all the time, player power. It's the leverage a top athlete has. Their importance on the field and their fame off it become these powerful tools to force a club to do something it doesn't want to do. And in this case, Isak used that power to make his situation at Newcastle impossible. So how did the deadlock finally break? Well, it was like a perfect storm of three things happening at once. First, Isak's rebellion basically forced Newcastle's hand. You just can't keep a superstar who is publicly refusing to be there. Second, Liverpool saw this. They smelled blood in the water and they refused to walk away. They knew they had an opening. And third, all that pressure just kept building and building until Newcastle hit a point where the conflict was just too toxic. The only real option left was to take the record-breaking money and just hit the reset button.
And with those three things all lined up perfectly, the inevitable happened. The standoff was over, the deal got done, and Alexander Isak got his move to Anfield.
And of course, just to add to the whole show, the final details came through right at the buzzer on deadline day. A 6-year deal, that famous number 9 shirt, and of course that incredible £125 million fee. The saga was, at last, over. So when you really look back on it all, the transfer of Alexander Isak wasn't just a business deal. It was a raw, unfiltered power play. It was this huge reminder of where the real leverage in modern soccer can be, not always with the club, not always in the contract, but with the star player who's bold enough to force the issue. And it really makes you wonder, in this day and age, who's really in charge?